Hello everybody and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Please like, share and subscribe, and please check out my videos I've done already. There's a vast array of different bits of material and ideas and concepts and all sorts there in the back catalogue, which I think you'll find very interesting. Thank you very much. Now we've got the corporate bit over. Today we're going to talk about the moon landing. This isn't a flat Earth type thing or a round Earth thing. It's just a look at the moon landing and some of the questions that I have and have seen raised about this. So it's going to be quite interesting. We'll see how we go with this one. But yeah. So I've done a presentation, and so without further ado, let's get on it. Right, now here we have the moon landing, and this is here the paper, the headline. This is an American paper, and here we can see the date, Monday, July 21st, 1969. The photo of the moon and Nixon. I think he was called Tricky Dicky, wasn't he? But President Nixon on the phone to the space guys and Apollo 11. So there we go. And I've also got one from here, the Waterloo Daily Courier, another highly quality establishment paper, and we can see here we have exactly the same kind of thing, and again Monday, July 21st, 1969. And this is the good old Guardian in the UK. And again, Monday the 21st, 1969 from the Guardian in the UK. And so we can clearly see it's worldwide news, and the reason for these newspapers and the front pages will become apparent later. But I just want to show that we do actually have, you know, there's plenty of look, 6p for a newspaper. Very nice too. Anyway, let's get back on with it. There is a reason for these newspaper articles, which we'll get to shortly. So this is from the History channel. They first set foot on the moon in July 1969. And July 22nd, Apollo began its journey home. And it splashed down in the Pacific Ocean on July the 24th. They're on the moon for, from memory, 21 hours. And I think they even had a little sleep while they were on the moon inside the spacecraft for 7 hours. So yeah, but here we go. So we can clearly see that, you know, 11:11 on 21st, 3 and 3, 1 2 3, 1 2 and 1 is 3, 3 3, 33. We have this all going on, but yeah. But a date that's very interesting is they came back on the 24th. So the 21st they were on the moon, and they came back on the 24th of July. Now we have this iconic photograph of the first man on the moon, Neil Armstrong, about to set foot onto the moon. This is the moon and this is space. And this is the camera that shot that film. Now, this is obviously a NASA special, but we need to think 1969 and not 2025. In 1969 there was no digital images. All images were film. So this is a film camera. Very old-fashioned system today, but this is a film camera. The film would have been in here and it would have turned, or this is the mechanism to turn the film, and the film or the optic would have gone through here, and there would have been potentially two lots of film rolling, but this would have taken film, not digital, film, physical, hold in your hand film. We can all remember the days where we used to take our photographs and go to the local chemist or the photo store with our canister, our film canister, once the film had finished and been wound in, and hand it over, and a few days later we would get the photographs back. And this is the film or the camera that we've just seen in the background. I think the other astronaut, whichever one it is out there with him, sorry I can't remember, but Neil and Buzz was Armstrong. Neil Armstrong and I can't remember, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter either, clearly. But here we have the camera. So here we go again, July 24th they returned to Earth, and they were put in quarantine for 21 days because they're potential biological pathogens. So they landed, and for 21 days no one got to see them. So 3 days after walking on the moon, so 3 again, they landed. So here we have the front page news on Monday, July the 21st, 1969. We've seen this already. They were on the moon on July the 21st with a film camera. That film could only be processed once it came back to Earth. So how did all the newspapers and all the television watch the live moon landing? And how did they get all these images from a film camera? There was no digital camera technology in 1969. I really don't know how. Because none of this should have been possible until the 24th or the 25th, when that film had been looked at, seen, and then processed and given to the world. I don't understand that one. We have a film camera that needs processing, that's physically thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles away from its location, and yet we can have images like this beamed across the world and on the front of newspapers. Very impressive, eh? We also have the phone conversation, a landline. We didn't have mobile phones back then. We didn't have analog phones of the original early days of mobile phones. I think in the early 80s mobile phones came out, possibly late 70s, but certainly it was the 80s that I remember mobile phones technology coming in. And here we have a president on a landline talking to some guys in space. Was it 93 million miles away or something like that? This is the phone. This is the famous phone. But the moon landing was on July the 20th, 1969 here. Maybe they did land on the 20th and then the 21st they got out of the craft. But this is real high-tech stuff, because it's even got push buttons, and in them days that was really high-tech, because I can remember we just had a round dial one when I was young. In fact, in the UK we got our first landline home telephone, and that would have been in the late 70s, I would say. Before that there were no telephones. You had to go down to the telephone box to make a phone call. Before we go on to this, yeah, no, that's fine. We'll do it this way. So we have the camera, which is film. It's 23,000 miles away, 23,000 miles away. And he's got a radio headset. This is it. Today we would need a satellite dish, a huge satellite dish pointing out towards where it was going to make that call, and we can't. To this day our mobile phone technology is terrible in the sticks. Doesn't work. Out in the countryside, sticks is the countryside, by the way, and there's plenty of dead zones as well, and yet in space, 23,000 miles away, with a little radio headset, he can have a conversation with President Nixon with no lag, no delay. Almost as if you're sitting in the next room, isn't it? Now, before we go there, I want to go back to this image here. This was taken by this camera to take this image, and we've seen the cameras being placed here. So if this is the first step onto the moon, how did he get the camera onto the moon first? And remember, there was live footage of this as he steps down off. Live footage. So, was the first person on the moon Neil Armstrong's cameraman? Who defied physics and the law of everything we know, and took the film and got back to Earth in exactly the same day, processed it and was able to show it as a real, live on television almost. This is impossible. Interesting that they stayed in quarantine for 21 days and they were on the moon for 21 hours. 2 and 1 is 3. 21 hours, 2 and 1 is 3. 3, 3. So here we have film director Stanley Kubrick. Very, very, very famous and very, very prolific quality filmmaker. He's with NASA officials. This is a NASA advisor. This is an astronaut. This is Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke did a lot of very good sci-fi stuff, didn't he? Books. We don't know who this gentleman is, but this is Stanley Kubrick. And this is the senior Apollo project manager. And the guy here, because I've seen this photo a few times in different guises, always the same. But the guy here, I believe, from memory, is Walt Disney. So I think we have Walt Disney with Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke with the NASA bigwigs having a meeting in 65. Kind of interesting. TV, film, TV, film, cartoons, make believe. The gentleman here is Walt Disney. Why would there be a photo of Stanley Kubrick with one of the astronauts? Quite interesting. What advisory role could a film director be giving an astronaut about to go into space? There's a very interesting, and you guys might want to look it up, there's a very interesting confessional of Stanley Kubrick before he dies on his deathbed regarding Apollo 11 and his involvement in this. Now, although this is a different space mission to the moon, I'm not saying this is a real picture, but it's very interesting. Apart from the fact that they're there for a selfie, and we have the Earth in the background. There's very, very many things wrong with this picture. Now, we're going to talk about the spacecraft in a second, and I will go back to that picture with the moon and the Earth as well. Very iconic pictures that we've seen like that before. But we have the spacecraft, and you can see it's got legs and bits, and so these two guys spent 21 hours on the surface in their spacesuits, and managed in there to get dressed and have a sleep in there and eat, and go to the little boy's room, all while in space. Quite fascinating, isn't it? Amazing, in fact. So this is Apollo 11 at the launch. Solid big rocket ship. That turned into this on the moon. And we can see the size. There's for size reference, there's the man standing there. You know, it's lots of legs and arms and stuff coming off, as we can see here. Look, legs, arms, jets, rocket bits and pieces. So this is how it left Earth. It changed into this in space, and when they came back, it was this. So where on this rocket was that? And where on this rocket was that? Is this bit cone? It's cone. Yeah, okay. So in this bit here, was this bit in there? And how did the legs pop up? Because you can see the size of the man with this, and you can see the size of the astronaut with this. Or is this bit this tiny bit at the top? And is this bit in this bit? And did this come apart? '60s technology was so advanced. It's like the Transformers films, isn't it? And while we're on this subject, we've already seen the photo. Oh no, we haven't actually. It's there. We have the moon rover. I know it's a different one, but this is the spacecraft that this fitted into, that these guys drove around on the moon with. Seems to be quite a thing to have your helmets off. It's the same. You can see the wheel. See the wheel's the same. Got a couple of garden deck chairs. Some sort of material. On this we have foil material. Could be gaffer tape. You know, that kind of stuff. And we'll get into that in a minute as well. But yeah. Perhaps this is when they were practicing for the moon. Now, this is Apollo 17, and I'm not sure if this is actually correct, 22 hours, but I do know that if you go underwater, and we'll take water as being like a vacuum to us, we can't breathe in it, these two tanks here will last for 1 hour. You might get 2 hours these days with the real modern stuff, hour and a half, but you know, you're looking around an hour's worth of breathing. This is a typical space suit that we're showing. This one from Apollo 17, which is obviously, you know, a lot later than Apollo 11. Now, Armstrong spent 2 hours and 31 minutes on the surface of the moon. No oxygen apart from what was in his tank. So if that's, say, an hour and a half, you'd need 4 of those tanks worth in your backpack. Yeah. This is the International Space Station, by the way. Again, these astronauts are only practicing. That's all they're doing is practicing. There's nothing to see here whatsoever. There's never any bubbles been seen in space. There's never been any mice seen running around on rockets or bumblebees. Nothing like that has ever happened before. And in the window of the International Space Station, a diver with a backpack on has never been seen floating through space on the outside. I can assure you that's never ever been seen, and there's not lots and lots of film footage of that around if you care to look. It's very interesting that modern astronaut suits now have an aqua lung, because a few years ago one of the astronauts nearly drowned in space. He nearly drowned in space, you know. Space is a vacuum, there's no water in space. But he nearly drowned, so they now have an aqua lung fitted inside here so they can breathe oxygen from a suit that produces oxygen. So yeah. Now, this is an image that I wanted to talk about. This is Apollo 11 with the Earth and the Moon and the spaceship. And this is they're called their space porn. And this sits here in the corner. If you can just see this, is credit NASA Apollo 11 photographer Mitchell Collins and restoration Toby Ord. Now, Michael Collins. I wonder if he was the guy who took the photograph of Armstrong coming out of the spaceship. And again, we can see the craft from a different angle in HD that looks nothing like the rocket that left. And here we have the moon surface, and here we have the Earth. Iconic photo. So who took this photograph? How did Michael Collins take this photograph? Was there a second ship? Remember, this is film era, so he's taken a film photograph of this in space, of the spacecraft Apollo 11, of the moon and of the Earth. I'm not sure how he did that. Because I would say this is CGI. Now we also have another issue with this photo. Here we have the Earth. Well, the Earth's in the wrong position. We see one face of the moon, and we only ever see one face of the moon. And they landed on the face of the moon, facing Earth. So if you hold up your hand, your right hand, and hold it flat, that's the moon. You're looking at the moon. And if you hold up your other hand parallel to it, that's the Earth. So from the Earth we look up and we see the face of the Earth from the moon. and the moon face from Earth. It's like it never changes. We see it. So in angles, that would be above our heads. And yet the Earth, this is very difficult to explain, I should have drawn a picture, but the Earth is at 90 degrees to your hand and not opposite your hand. We see this face standing on the Earth. This face is at 90 degrees to the Earth, so we would never see this. And if you say, well, they were round the corner, and they'd been round the corner on the curvature, then how would they get any kind of signal, even today in modern times, through solid rock? So we can't do that today, let alone with film and a camera that has to be developed in 1969. This image here, this should be above the head, and you should not be able to see the moon unless they're right on the perfect edge of. But from my understanding, they landed on the face of the moon that we can see. So the Earth is in the wrong place. Also, it's flat there. We've got a slight angle now. Or is it because that's sloping to give us the impression of bend and curvature? It seems very, very parallel here. Yet that edge is definitely higher. Or is that because they were flying? Or was that the angle of the guy flying behind, Michael flying behind the spacecraft taking the photograph in film? Now, this is something that's very interesting, is the Challenger explosion. I can remember in 1986 watching this live on television. Very, very strong memory of the Challenger disaster where all these astronauts died. Yet all bar one seems to be back on Earth with twins that never existed, the same name, doing the same job, looking identical to each other. It's very interesting, isn't it? There's multiple slides of this kind of thing. Worth looking up. There's only one of these that's still not around or has not been seen. All the rest, I mean, they've even got the same name and doing the same job as they were before, some of these. But they died in the explosion of the shuttle. It's another version. So this is Richard and this is Richard. This is Michael J. Smith and this is Michael J. Smith. This is Judith and this is Judith. It's very interesting, isn't it? Well, Sharon and Sharon, and oh, he has at least changed his name because he's the brother. That's fine. Very interesting, isn't it? Because just like in Walt Disney, when they show you flying over the castle and going back down again, this is the actual path of all spacecraft that take off. They go up, then they curve back down again. They go up and they curve back down again. Up and down again. They take off in Florida and the rockets land in the Bermuda Triangle. Why would they curve their rockets? All rockets do the same. All rockets. But now we've got Elon Musk, whose rockets go up and land back down by themselves as well, which is absolutely amazing. Brilliant, hey? So this is NASA's rejig of coming out of a, I think this is meant to be Neil Armstrong. I don't think it is, but 2.5 hours worth of oxygen in a bendy suit with some boots and some thin old gloves, climbing down a little metal railing ladder with some heat shielding and a little door that he's managed to get in and out of in his bulky suit. And he spent 21 hours there, 7 hours sleep, went to the loo, did everything. Awesome. I think someone has some facts about space. We have something called the thermosphere above us, and it's between 500 and 2000 degrees C. So as we can see here, we have a little metal ladder and tape, material, suits made out of material, all sorts of very interesting things. So let's look at the melting point of metals. Lead's 327, magnesium 650, aluminium, which is what we're told the ships were made of, is 660, but aluminium alloys is between 463 and 671 degrees C. Gold is 1063, copper 1084, steel 1425 to 1540, and titanium 1670. So what was this made out of? Because that doesn't look like titanium. He doesn't look like titanium. The door and the shielding doesn't look like titanium, because titanium looks like stainless steel, and none of that really looks like stainless steel. It looks like aluminium or iron to me. Bit like that car that they drove around with the material. Remember, they were driving the rover around on the moon's surface. Now I know the moon doesn't get quite as hot as the thermosphere. Wonder what material is made of. Asbestos? So let's have a look at the temperature on the moon. 120 degrees C. And when it gets really cold, it goes down to minus 130 degrees C. So that's a huge fluctuation in temperature. So we go above boiling point and lower than you could ever imagine on the moon. But the moon is in space, and space is a vacuum, and the pressure of a space at 50 kilometers from Earth is about 10 negative 3 megabars. And 170 kilometers away is 10 to the power of 6 millibars. And they were 2,300 miles away, which is a lot more than 170 kilometers. So that's roughly a 0.00001 of a thousandth of an atmosphere. That's a vacuum. Now, vacuums are very interesting things. Very interesting things. Vacuums mean that fire won't work. And things with that much pressure would go pop or implode, a bit like a can of drink going down, or a can goes down into the sea and gets squashed and scrushed. And yet he's in a little suit. You might want to look vacuums up. Needs a sealed container to hold it. The thermosphere is 200 degrees C, hotter in the daytime than at night, and roughly 500 degrees C hotter when the sun is very much so. So again, we're looking at 500 degrees C to 2000. This is another thing of the thermosphere, just to show you. It's very interesting that thermosphere is where the International Space Station flies around. And space is very, very cold. So it's minus 454 degrees, or minus 270 degrees in space, in a vacuum. And he's wearing a suit that keeps him warm in minus 270 degrees Celsius on the moon. And that metal container with no ice on it, which is in perfect condition, keeps him warm. So how do astronauts not freeze in space, I wondered. So I asked the question. And they're equipped with different ways of generating heat to keep astronauts warm and cosy. For instance, there are solar panels. I didn't think we had solar panels in 1969. Nuclear power generators. So he has a nuclear power generator strapped to his back with the oxygen as well. I'm not sure. And there's other engineering solutions to this problem. Other. So how did he not freeze? 2 hours and 31 minutes walking around on the moon in minus 200 degrees centigrade. Very interesting. Very interesting how he didn't freeze. Clothing, gloves, pipe work. As he breathes in, the face thing with any moisture would freeze instantly. Mist up. Where's the vented oxygen coming from his breath? Any vent at minus 200 would freeze immediately, and he wouldn't be able to vent the oxygen out of, even if this contained oxygen. A lot of questions. And again, we go back to this slide that they stayed in quarantine for 21 days after they landed on the 24th with the physical film from their cameras from surviving minus 200 degrees in a tin can that went through the thermosphere that would have melted the tin can. A lot of questions there, isn't there? And this is the iconic picture of the joyous press conference of the 3 men who did this, and of the 2 men that walked on the moon. So happy and joyful, aren't they? Really happy and joyful. I can't believe how happy they are. It's almost as if they trained and were told what they were going to be doing, and they believed it up until the point where they walked towards the rocket, and they were ushered into a different room, and they said, "You're not going." and you have 21 days with Stanley Kubrick, or 25, 26 days with Stanley Kubrick, Walt Disney and Arthur C. Clarke to film a little story. And as soon as that, I mean, who knows? I mean, they got footage out. Was it actually them in the spacesuits? You'd never know. They could have filmed all of that before, and these guys never did anything. They had actors playing the role in the spacesuits. You don't see who's in the spacesuits. This was all pre-filmed, potentially. And it was released while these guys were locked up, and they were told, potentially, if you don't play ball, then you won't be playing ball again. There was a NASA astronaut a few years ago who started talking and saying things, and he came to a very sticky end. I can't see if they're wearing their Masonic rings quite in this, but they are all part of the club now. So I've only looked at a couple of things briefly. I mean, the vacuum of space is a big one. A jet will not propel you forward in the vacuum of space unless it has something to push off. And so the only way they could have got back to Earth from the moon would be if they landed directly opposite Earth, and they used the tiny amount of gravity that we're told that the moon has to push off from. But to create the jet and the blast, they would have had oxygen to create the burn. Where did they hold all that oxygen? They had no computing power. They were able to make phone calls on landlines and old film cine cameras that we would call old film cine cameras today, that have to have that film processed, survived minus 200 degrees temperature plus 120 degrees temperature. This is film now, and we all know from memory that if the camera got too hot or there was any light or any kind of issue, the film didn't work. But they had magic film. We also have a guy credited, Michael, for taking the shot of the spacecraft flying in space. And I guess it was Michael who actually took the film of the first man walking on the moon. There are so many questions. And it's also very interesting, and you can look this up. I think this guy's called Don Pettis, who's a NASA astronaut, and he was asked, why haven't we gone back to the moon? And his response was, because we lost the technology of 1969 to do it. These guys don't look like they've lost any technology, but they do look like they've lost something. Hello, we're back again. So hopefully that's got you thinking. I mean, this is 50 minutes nearly, and I ain't even scratched the surface really. This is an overview. Please do your own research. Please look at this stuff. I mean, we've all seen the images, and I think it's great that when the astronauts land in back on Earth, they put a blanket around them to keep them warm. So they put a blanket around an astronaut that's just come back to Earth, whose suit is capable of surviving in minus 200 degrees C. A blanket. Yeah. And I'm not even going to go to the Katy Perry debacle joke thing that we saw. I mean, yeah. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I hope it's given you food for thought. And please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Got some interesting stuff coming up at the end of this week and next week. So for those of you that have actually stayed with me so long, we actually have Sunday's Rockin' Pandora's Box with Richard Cardinal. And on Monday, the 28th, not only is it Richard's birthday, where he'll be opening some of his presents, and I'm sure we'll all be interested to see what gifts he got, especially from what I sent him. And we've also got Meten from Plutonic Planes again, and we're going to be doing our lightning thrice, and we're going to be looking at the month ahead, astrology wise and human design wise, and Rich is going to be pulling the cards. And I think we all enjoyed the first one. That was a real good show, and it's only going to get better. Now, if you're not sure about human design, please check out Meten's Plutonic Planes YouTube channel. He's done an awful lot of work. He's really been pumping the videos out recently, and he's done some introductory ones that might help you understand a bit better. So please check him out. He's got a lot of very good, interesting stuff there. He's a real deep thinker, that man. He's very clever. So please like, share and subscribe to him, Richard and myself. So love, light and blessings, everybody. Thank you very much, and I'll catch up with you very soon. Bye, everyone.